this morning, we're talking about that clever strategy of Satan designed to lure people away from Jehovah God. And so we're going to examine two approaches. One he used with the youngest intelligent creature in the universe, and the other he used on the oldest intelligent creature in the universe. So let's take the youngest first. Of course, that was Eve. Eve, so taking advantage of her inexperience, his purpose was to trick this woman and to seduce her. Now, how would he do it? Well, as we know, he was behind a serpent. He didn't want to show her who he really was, what his aim really was. His choice of words also reveal a lot, and our text is Genesis chapter 3. Let's go there, if you would. I'd like to just read his question again. Genesis chapter 3, verse 1. Did God really say that you must not eat from every tree of the garden? Now, what was his motive in asking this question? Well, as was stated in one of the commenters, what he was trying to do was to seed a doubt in her mind, implying that Jehovah God was holding something back from her. He was too restrictive on you. Well, it's interesting concerning questions. The BE book, Benefit from Theocratic Ministry School Education, on page 66 says, some questions are like icebergs. The most substantial part lies hidden beneath the surface. An underlying issue is often more important than the question itself. And in the case of Eve, when the question was asked, she didn't see the underlying purpose of the question. Her answer in verses 2 and 3 indicate this. She said, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but God has said about the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden, you must not eat from it. No, you must not touch it, otherwise you will die. Well, her answer was truthful, and it was an honest, innocent answer. But Satan had her exactly where he wanted her. You see, he was banking on her self-interest, that she would be more interested in herself, her own needs, than she was the love she had for the God that gave her everything that she had. Read his words again in verses 4 and 5. Satan said, you certainly will not die, for God knows that in the very day you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you'll be like God, knowing good and bad. Tragically, his gamble worked. She had not cultivated the kind of love and appreciation for Jehovah God that she should have. So what can we learn from this example? Well, if a perfect human can succumb to this kind of reasoning, irrational reasoning, really, it could happen to any of us. Jehovah God created us as free moral agents. That's the way he made Eve. He doesn't want robots. He wants us to be able to think things through, make the right choices, decide between right and wrong. Satan is counting on us making the wrong choices. Now, what can we do to counter that attack from Satan? Well, we have to know what is in our hearts. If you go to Hebrews chapter 12, verses 15 and 16, the Apostle Paul gives a warning to his fellow Christians against becoming people not appreciating sacred things. And that's sort of the context of these verses 15 and 16. He says, carefully watch that no one fails to obtain the undeserved kindness of God, so that no poisonous root springs up to cause trouble, and many be defiled by it. And watch that among you there is no one who is sexually immoral, nor anyone who does not appreciate sacred things. So there is a need, as he said here, in verse 15, carefully watch. Carefully watch that no poisonous root will spring up and contaminate the congregation. The expression poisonous root refers to a few that may be in a congregation who may find fault with the way things are done. Maybe even find fault with the direction Jehovah has given on matters. Maybe the sacredness of marriage or the need for moral cleanness. So we don't want to be those kind of people, obviously. But tell me, what's necessary before a root can appear? Well, a seed has to be planted, and then it germinates, and then it grows into a root. So it's at the seed level that we have to give special attention. We have to learn to identify these improper seeds, as it were. No one can do that for us because they can't read our heart. The seed we've never even voiced what the seed is, but it could be in our thinking and in our heart. And these internal weaknesses has to be addressed for fear we find ourselves in a circumstance maneuvered by Satan to accentuate that particular weakness. Now, James chapter 1, 14 and 15 really describes the process well. James 1, 14 and 15, where he says, each one's tried by being drawn out and enticed by his own desire. Own desire. Then the desire, seed, when it has become fertile, starts to grow, gives birth to sin. In turn, sin, when it has been carried out, brings forth death. So, being enticed by his own desire. Does that sound familiar? It's a powerful force. It's one that happened to Eve. The self-interests, they're similar. So what do we need to do? Well, as we said earlier, identify the seed, or seeds, if that may be the case. Don't let them germinate. Don't let them start to grow. Rid ourselves of that thinking. And if a poisonous root may happen to be in us or starting to grow, then we need to rip it out. And you may need to have help to do it. It may be impossible to remove a poisonous root by yourself. Now let's spend a few moments on the approach Satan used for the oldest intelligent creature in the universe, of course, Christ Jesus. Now in his case, he didn't try to hide himself. He realized there was no need to do that. Jesus knew exactly who he was. He understood the motive. And so he just went overtly right to Jesus. And as you know, in the account of Matthew 4, he said, look, just fall down and do an act of worship to me. So what does it tell us about Satan? Well, he has long been driven by jealousy over the worship that goes to Jehovah God. And he's going to go to any length possible to try to violate our worship to Jehovah God. He wants to pervert our worship to Jehovah God. And so if he has enough boldness to approach the Jesus Christ, then we know he will approach any one of us. And it makes no difference how strong spiritually we look on the outside. He will try to break our integrity. Clearly, the Bible reveals that Satan is a deadly strategist in seeking his aims. Happily, though, we don't have to be like Eve because we know the designs of Satan the devil. May each of us cultivate the kind of love Jesus had for Jehovah God so we too can stand firm in our integrity.